What advice do you have for young people who are wanting to get into this business? We do have some questions around how do you get your foot in the door on a film set? What do you do after graduating to like keep, progressing? And Dilcia, I'd love to start with you.
I mean, I think you guys chose great examples of filmmakers that are creating art that is personal and passionate. And I think, and what Christopher just said about not trying to make a film that impresses a certain type of institution or person is really important. This should really be about what you want to say and what you're trying to give to the world. Um, it's really hard to define what South by Southwest is gonna like. It's or you can go through different festivals and see what type of films they play, but you will never be able to guess what a specific programmer's taste will be like. That's why we don't give feedback, because you shouldn't be trying to get our opinions. You should really care about what you feel about the art you're creating. And I think passion is something that I really encourage. And I know that's very magical way of thinking of things, because there's a reality of getting yourself into the right circumstances, which doesn't always happen, for the queer community, for BIPOC, for women. So I do believe also in taking advantage of some of the resources, applying to different grants, different fellowships, et cetera, to help you, guide you, once you're ready to make films. There's not that much funding or support for short cinema, which is, really awful part of our system, and our country. We don't have that much support, but start small. We definitely have, we're advantage, and at this point we have so much more advantage with technology, where it's not as expensive to create. However, just I would just encourage you not to give up, especially if this is something you love. And some of the examples that were spoken about today was ideas that started 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when we were kids, essentially. So just chase after those passions and dreams. And I hope that I get to see some of your movies in the future, and that I get to support them somehow.
Awesome. I do want to be respectful of your time, Sam. I know that you have to drop soon, so I don't know if you want to give your advice before you have to leave us, but if you have time, if not.
Yeah, yeah, of course, I'm happy to. There were two things that a grad school professor shared with me that I've kind of kept close, and one was just to always work, like always be working, always be making work. And I've kind of was like, yeah, obviously I'm trying to always make work. What do you mean by that? And then he was like, no, always. Like, and at that time I was living in New York. He's like, even when you're on the train, take out your phone and make a video of whatever at people's feet. He was like, just always be engaged with your process and always be engaged with your practice. And I think that was a really good way for me to just start looking at the world and looking at myself in the world. And it's like understanding your practice as is not separate from your life, right? Everything, every engagement you're having. There's also this scene in the movie about Anna Winters, the documentary about Vogue, where her assistant with that wild red hair, she's talking about riding in the back of a cab, and she's like, I don't understand why people are always on their phone. Look out the window. There's inspiration everywhere you go. And I also think about that now every time I'm in the back of a lift. I'm trying not to look at my phone. I'm looking out the window, and just so I think that was an incredible bit of advice that I try to share. And then the other thing that I've learned now is that you have to build a team, and I wish there were another word rather than this like sports metaphor, but you need to find your people, and it's like I feel like with Disclosure, that sort of grassroots community building that both Amy and I have been part of for 20 years is what made Disclosure possible. These are relationships that we have been nurturing, whether it's working on people's projects or engaging people in the projects we have. And it's finding people who are like-minded, you know, who have the same ethics and values you have, and the same passion for telling stories and nurturing those relationships. I think it's a combination of those two things that really keep you grounded and help you make your work and bring it to the world.
That is wonderful advice. Um, feel free to drop whenever you need to. We completely understand.
Well,
And I'm gonna
it was such a
thank you
joy.
so much, Sam.
You all. Thank you so much.
And if you haven't, anybody in the audience, if you haven't already watched Disclosure is on Netflix, so go watch it this weekend. Thank you, Sam. Amy, what about you? What's your advice?
Oh, I think that the conversations that Sam and I and Laverne Cox, our executive producer, who came on, um, 2.5 years before we finished the film and really came on as a creative producer, the conversations we had that informed our production model, informed who we hired, informed the people we took money from, informed all the partnerships, as Sam was talking about, our team, were intentional, and I think are reflected in the film. And I think that was something that made Sam and I really good partners, to make this a reality, was that we were both wanting the experience and wanting the relationships that we formed to match the kind of values that we were trying to, and the message of the film. So, the medium was the message, and the process really was as important as the product. And we paid everybody, and we paid our cast for their time. It was very, very hard to raise the money, and we were laughed out of rooms at times when we would state our budget because of what we required ourselves to pay people to work on this film and not ask them to give away their resources and their time and their energy. So I think as a result, you had this kind of behind the scenes that made the film what it is, that made our interviews so astonishing, because there was so much trust in the room, and we valued every single person who was on set. And so, I think whatever informs a maker to create something, I believe it's hard to be an artist in the United States. There's so little support, as Dilsey was saying. It's just, it takes a lot of, inner strength and searching. And I think whatever those values are that you want to put out into the world with your picture, you have to also put into the process of how it's made and who you choose to work with. And not only for your own experience and soul and spirit to get through the challenges, but also it'll make a better film.
And I think speaks to what Sam was just saying in terms of building your people, building the filmmaking team. The more respect you bring and the more you actually demonstrate the values that you're trying to project, the more that becomes a really strong fiber of community, versus just okay, now we're all on to the next, and everybody goes and does their own thing. And you really are building more of a community than you are just a production team. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And what about you, Christopher? What advice would you give? You were on. Oh yeah, there you go.
I mean, all the advice so far has been so great. It's for me, when I look back at my journey, it's hard to it's even hard to tell myself a narrative of how I got to where I am. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. It was a lot of just following what was intuitive to myself, just really just continuing to work and work and work and be persistent and have resilience, because there's a lot of no's. There's a lot of people who will, yeah, it's just it's so challenging to make just one film that it almost is like, you know, I feel like the fact that I love the actual doing I love the actual making, I love writing, I love being on set, I have fun, I love my team members. I've worked with the same team members and crew for, 10 years now, and I just love just being with them and just hanging out with them and making stuff. And it's just, um, and so it becomes less about the goal of making a film, and more about like trying to have fun and trying to do something that just adds value to all of our lives because we love doing it. So yeah, I guess for me, when I think back, it's just persistence and having resilience in face of all the challenges and all the no's. And when I think about that, I think it's because I can tap into something inside of myself that is, that it's true to myself, that I want to say. It's like, it has to be bigger than movies, or it has to be bigger than like I don't know, a successful film. It has to be like about something that really drives you inside to keep going every day. And I was very fortunate in that I was for many years working as an editor, as I mentioned, so I was able to um, uh, make a living, paying rent, getting food for myself, while also having time in the morning. Like I would wake up every morning to just start writing. I'd set a little bit of time. If I wrote for half an hour, then I would consider that a success, and I'd go on with my day and be very happy with myself. And so just setting myself like little sort of benchmarks so that I'm constantly working and having fun doing it. I think if I didn't love it so much, then I don't know how I would be able to face how challenging it is to make a move.
Your answer actually leads very well into one of the questions in the chat pod. Rihanna Smith asks, how did you get into editing for others on their projects?
How did I get into editing? I always loved editing. I think what happened was I took like an internship at just on a whim. Someone mentioned to me that a director was looking for help on a film, and I went in. I was like basically like a night AE, like just organizing footage. But I took the initiative to also just cut some things and show it to the director. When she saw it, she like kind of lost her mind. She was like, "This is amazing," and then she started paying me. So I was very lucky, and then because of that, I was able to get more AE jobs. And it was very hard. I was an AE for a very long time, and I wanted to be an editor because AE work is it's sort of mindless. It's fun, but it's kind of just it doesn't feel creative. And so I waited a long time until one of my friends finally made a feature film, and he was like, "I want you to edit this," and that was my first feature film that I edited. So I don't know. I guess it's just I feel it sounds like when I'm telling the story, it sounds like all really lucky or something. But just yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, there was we did a panel with some editor about last year. We did a panel about transitioning from assistant editor to editor, and one of the editors of Honey Boy, Monica Salazar, which was also a Sundance film, spoke about that when she was even a post PA, that she would get coffee and she would deliver the coffee, and then she would always have her laptop and she would be editing projects of her own, whether for friends or and largely unpaid, but she would just constantly be editing, because when people would come by and say, "Oh, what are you working on?" she'd be like, "Oh, well, I'm editing that." And she was always sort of presenting herself as an editor. I'm an editor. I'm an editor. Yes, I'm a post PA, but I'm actually an editor. And I just loved that piece of advice, that it's like, if you in your own head is, I'm a director, I'm an editor, and that's who I am, even though where I am in my journey is perhaps a post PA, that will reinforce that concept in other people's minds. And I loved that, the sort of believe it in yourself. And that's, one of the steps to getting there.
Yeah, I
Uh,
love that. I just want to say, like, once I became an editor, you then have AEs, and it's hard. You're so in your head just editing. You don't know. I mean, I try to be good and try to get to know my AEs, but sometimes it's hard. You're thinking, oh, they just, they're just doing that as a side job. They don't really care about the job. But when they take the initiative to start cutting something or to start showing you something, then you're like, oh wow, this person's really passionate about it, and it just, opens up a door in which you maybe bring them into the edit and then show and like sit them down and like bounce ideas off of them. But usually, yeah, it's like a thing that needs to probably be cultivated within the production company or within the production, in which those lines of communication are open, because otherwise it's very easy to think, oh, this AE is just an AE,
yeah,
which is terrible.
absolutely.
He's just an AE, right?
Yeah.